Here's what Donald Trump said about pardoning himself 2 years ago.
On the pardon power, do you believe that you are above the law if you could pardon yourself?
No, I'm not above the law. I never want anybody to be above the law. But the pardons are a very positive thing for a president. I think you see the way I'm using them. And yes, I do have an absolute right to pardon myself.
Joining us now is Laurence Tribe, University Professor of Constitutional Law at Harvard. He has won 35 cases, at least, in the United States Supreme Court. Professor Tribe, thank you very much for joining us tonight. The table is set, and I just want to read for the audience the actual language of the pardon clause in the Constitution, so we'll all have that going into this discussion. It simply says, "He shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment." And Professor Tribe, I'm leaning strongly toward the idea that this president can pardon himself because this clause does not say that he cannot. And the majority conservative justices on the Supreme Court, most of whom think of themselves as what they call originalists, would look to that language and find nothing in that language that bars the president from pardoning himself. So that's where I begin on this subject. Now I'm taking notes because now I'm going to get a free Harvard Law School class.
Well, the justices would begin there, just as you would, but they wouldn't stop there. They would also notice that in the very next section of Article 2, Section 3, it says explicitly, the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It doesn't say except the criminal laws. It doesn't say except when he chooses to violate the criminal laws. Now, if it were true, as Donald Trump said in the little segment you played, that the president has the absolute power to grant himself a power of pardon, to grant himself a pardon, which would be an odd way for the framers to have put it. You grant things to other people. If he had the absolute power to grant himself a pardon, and if he knew that throughout his presidency, and if all presidents knew it, what would follow is that presidents do not have to follow the law. They can't be, according to the Justice Department, indicted while they're in office. And if at any time they could pardon themselves, it could be a secret pardon, stick it in the Resolute desk, or at the very last hour of his presidency, you could say, oh, by the way, I hereby pardon myself for any federal crime I might have committed from the moment I took the oath. If that were the case, then the president would not be below the law, he'd be above it. He couldn't be prosecuted criminally, even if, let's say, he took Steve Bannon's advice when Bannon a month ago posted a video on Facebook recommending that we behead the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, and that we behead Tony Fauci. The president, has said he could just shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. This would make that literally true. There would be no limit. Every president would know from the very moment puts his hand on that Bible and takes the oath that whatever he does or she does during the 4-year term of that presidency could not be criminally prosecuted either during the presidency or ever in the future, because the pardon would cover everything that president had done. Now, we know that the framers didn't bother saying that the president cannot grant himself a pardon because no one in their right mind would have imagined otherwise. They talked in the Constitutional Convention and in the Federalist Papers about the danger that the president might pardon his cronies, the people who might help him get away with impeachable offenses. They debated whether he should be able to do that. They concluded that they would not put any language in the pardon power itself to prevent that. But there wasn't a whisper of a suggestion that the president could simply make himself immune to the criminal laws of the United States. On the contrary, they had just fought a revolution in the wake of George III exercising extraordinary power But even he didn't have the power to murder people and get away with it during the time that he was the king. Magna Carta set the baseline in the year 1215 that nobody is above the law. Now, why hasn't the Supreme Court yet spoken on it? Easy answer. No president has dared try it, but let him dare try it. The Supreme Court, even a really conservative court, reading the language, the president can grant pardons, and looking at the history and looking at the centuries-old history that people aren't to be their own judges, would have to conclude that either presidents can get away with murder literally during the presidency and forever after because they can pardon themselves, or we have to look at Section 3, which says the president must faithfully execute the law and treat that as limiting what Section 2 says about the pardon power. The Constitution has lots of powers that don't contain their own limits within their four corners. But you look at the whole Constitution and its history and the history of the American Revolution to understand what it means. That's why I think any argument that the president can grant himself a pardon would be incoherent, incompatible with the history of the Constitution, with the language of Section 3, and with the principle that no one is above the law. And even the president himself in that segment you quoted said, "Oh, I'm not above the law, except I am, because I can pardon myself." You can't have it both ways.
Yes. Professor Laurence Tribe, as far as I'm concerned, the case is now settled here at The Last Word. On this show, the president can't pardon himself. We'll find out next year if the Supreme Court has to make a decision about that. Professor Laurence Tribe, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I learned a lot, as I always do.
Thanks, Lawrence.